OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Welcome along to Off the Ball AM. It's a beautiful morning in Dublin, Wednesday morning, and a good morning to everyone who is listening in. And we've loads to talk about on the show. We'll get through that in the next 10 minutes. Give you a little bit of a menu of what's coming up, mainly football and rugby. And Daniel McDonnell. Morning,
Johnny.
Dan.
Johnny, good morning to you.
Yeah, it's
feeling fresh.
We talked about this yesterday. You're not really a morning person, so you wouldn't normally be getting up at 6:30 or 6 or whatever it was this morning.
No, but like once you get up, it's actually a good thing, isn't it? You know, you get into everyone's feeling fresh and lively in the morning.
How long does it take you to like I was cycling in, but I kind of couldn't get the sleep out of my eyes. You know, I'm still half groggy, but kind of getting there. How long does it take you?
I find once you're up, you're up. But the key is to leave the alarm or phone at another end of the room, so you actually have to get up. That whole thing of reaching over and just flicking off the alarm, that's dangerous. But once you're up, you're up. You have to get a lot of sort of red-eye flights and stuff. I've never missed one. Yeah. But the key is just that suitable distance between person and alarm. Then you're up.
It's a beautiful morning as well, but you kind of can sense it getting colder. The evenings are drawn in. Are you one of these people that gets a bit depressed by the long nights ahead and all that?
No,
4 o'clock darkness.
It tends to happen around this time every year. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's not
consistent.
It's not the most razor sharp analysis, but it always makes for good small talk in a taxi or whatnot. You know, evenings are drawn in. I see.
The evenings are drawn in. The last evening we had a lot of football. What did you get up to? Did you watch?
I watched a couple of games. I suppose there is that. I mean, once the Champions League groups draw in, there is that sort of wintry element to it. I watched the Inter Milan game, Slavia Prague, which was the 5-6 match, and then watched most of Napoli, Liverpool, but sort of was flicking around a small bit as well between other options. But yeah, pretty enjoyable. The Inter Slavia game was good because Slavia. I don't know if you saw when the draw for the competition took place, but the Slavia Prague hadn't been in the Champions League for a while. Yeah, and it flicked to the Slavia Prague delegation, who had this sort of smile on their face as they drew Inter, Barca, and Borussia Dortmund, and the whole line was, well, basically they're screwed here. But actually, they were much the better side for most of that game last night, and really unlucky that Inter basically fluked at an injury time equaliser. But I always have a soft spot for sort of actual champions that are participating in the competition.
Well, it is called the Champions League.
Yeah, so I like having champions in it. Yeah. And some people don't because they haven't heard of some of them. I mean, God forbid, they don't play in one of the 5 big leagues, you know, or one league. So I was sort of rooting for them, and they actually pretty much dominated that game. And you had Inter with obviously, Lukaku playing, Antonio Conte on the sideline, Alexis Sanchez on the bench. So there was a certain amount of interest in how they were going to do. I think they're top of Serie A. I think they started the season reasonably well, and they were bang average, to be honest. But pretty unlucky for Slavia that they didn't get the 3 points at the end of the day. Napoli, Liverpool. I suppose the story's well told.
Is it well told already?
Well, it's actually true. Well, I suppose it's true. I mean, people maybe didn't see it, but I mean, Liverpool lost the game, but the extent to which that costs them over a period of time is a matter of debate. I mean, they're in the group with Red Bull, Salzburg, and Genk. Red Bull won 6-2 last night. See, Alfin Haaland's son scored a hat-trick. Brilliant.
Do you get kind of inspired by the fact that Jason KB, Jay's KB? I remember his dad playing, or are you like? Getting a bit old.
Well, I think it's more the latter, really, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, Alfin Haaland's son. I mean, he's 19, so obviously he was when Roy Keane sort of went through him.
He wasn't even born.
No, he would have been born. Yeah,
96, 7.
No, I think the revenge tackle was a bit later. He wouldn't have been born when the initial incident at Ellen Road took place. But I think by the time Keane sort of sought his retribution when Haaland was playing for Manchester City, I'd say he would have just been maybe born around that time. That pretty much marked the end of his dad's career, didn't it? So.
Do you know, it's funny as well, you can then say to you can go, if you saw him, you should have seen his father play.
Well, see, you cover the horses, John. You're used to more the sort of the breeding sort of end of things.
Actually, it's funny you mention that, because initially when I got into it, and the first time I started to see horses run whose dads or mothers I remembered, which does take it takes a few years, I was like, this is great. You can see if they have the same traits and all that, but with footballers, it's just like...
Well, they're not going to follow the exact same behaviour.
No, it's also just you're getting old.
That would be so freaky if they did.
It would. I'm wearing this hoodie, by the way, this morning. The reason I mention it is I hadn't worn it since I was at a festival which must be...
How does it smell?
When was All Together Now? When was that festival on? It was during... God, it must be like...
Was that around the time of the Galway races?
It was the Galway races.
You had your 2 festivals in 1 week.
Yeah, so... Oh, yeah, so went to Carabeg with yourself.
Baku, yeah.
Yeah, and then went to Galway for 2 days.
August Bank Holiday, yeah.
What?
The August Bank Holiday.
The August Bank Holiday.
Have you watched it since then, or was it just...
So I watched it, and this morning I was like, what will I wear in studio? I might put on a hoodie or whatever, but I hadn't worn it since, obviously. So I put my hand into the pockets and I was like, what's this? So I lost my ATM card at the festival, but I didn't cancel it on the premise that I might, relocate it and they might find it at the site, like, because they do a big cleanup. So I didn't cancel the card anyway, and I was monitoring it just to see, like, anyway, I found it this morning. So what's that, like 6 weeks later?
Have you cancelled it?
No.
It's still in service.
It's here somewhere, actually.
That's a sort of an unbelievable twist of fate.
And it came through the wash okay as well.
You're sort of a disastrous character, really.
That's a shambolic state of affairs. Like, I lost. Because
that week in Baku, you've also left your suit jacket and passport behind in the hotel you checked out of. And we had to collect it for you and bring it to you.
Why did I have my suit? That must have been for Galway, with the view to Galway, was it?
Yeah, you brought a suit to Azerbaijan with a view to wearing it in Galway.
Because I had to go straight to...
Yeah.
And
for some reason you put your passport in it and you left it in your hotel when you checked out.
Did you enjoy Baku, actually?
I had a great time.
Yeah, it was a very interesting place.
Really interesting city. One of the better trips I think that we would ever go on. And like, it's one of the great things about... Like, it's funny, I'm sort of looking at the lads in Japan now. I'm actually a bit envious. It's a sort of a trip that I would be very envious of. But there wouldn't be many of those in rugby. A lot of those other trips I think are a bit samey. Go to the same places all the time. So New Zealand, Australia, where else in the Commonwealth can we go next? I know Argentina's on the cycle now. But
Commonwealth.
But like Japan is like, looks fascinating. I'm looking at the sort of stories and pictures and stuff, and I'm thinking, I think they've rocked up in Yokohama today, and I'm like, yeah, that's a proper tale. But like, what I love about the football side of things is going somewhere like Baku. I mean, as much as Baku is trying to like set itself as a venue, it's still not somewhere you're going to go on holidays.
No.
And it gives you much more of a feel even for the group stages of these competitions now. When they come in, Carabag are in the Europa League still. I see Manchester United played Astana in the Europa League, and I was in Astana with Ireland a couple of years ago, and you just get a lot more, I don't know, it just gives you a lot more of a connection to it, because you get to see like the football cultures in the different countries. And that's probably why I would be very much of the view that like these smaller clubs as such, who are actually massive clubs in their own right, fully belong in the Champions League, because these are countries that are still football mad at their own level, and they should always have the opportunity to participate in the biggest competition. It doesn't just revolve around a TV audience watching the same 8 or 9 teams. It's not the NFL. It's meant to be a broader competition than that.
I do like the fact that in Dublin, like, you always meet people, and I was cycling around last week, and Rory O'Connor, your colleague, he was flying out the next day.
Yeah.
But when Brian O'Driscoll was on here, was that a week or two previously?
With you?
With me, of course, yeah.
The podcast
he was saying
charts,
that,
I believe.
What?
You were top of the podcast chart.
Oh, yeah.
You took that screen grab and you sent it around to everyone you knew.
It was like my rugby show with whoever was top of the podcast. But
who's the other lad?
Brian O'Driscoll was saying that he was working for ITV for the first kind of part of the tournament, and he wasn't mad on the idea of going away for 6 weeks, and I was like, I completely agree with you. So I was saying it to Rory as well, but Rory was buzzing to be away. I think his wife was coming over for a week, so at least that meant like that. Like 6 weeks is a long time to be anywhere, and I would get kind of angsty after maybe 2 weeks. 6 weeks would be a long time for me, and I was like, if somebody said to me, you can cover whatever for 6 weeks, I'd be like, I'll miss the race and I'd miss the League of Ireland and all that.
You're best going for a pint Friday afternoon.
Just going to Fallon's.
Yeah. Just a familiar face. But you're a bit of a home bird, John. I
would be a bit of a home bird, definitely. I think we've the menu here somewhere. Here we go. Kick off at 7:30, which we more or less abided by. Sports page is at 7:40. We haven't abided by that. Graham Hunter, always an interesting interviewee.
A character.
He is, yeah.
I'd say full of life first thing in the morning as well.
Yeah.
So he talks to his alarm clock.
He's going to be on at...
Wakes his alarm clock up.
8:05. Neale Fenn is interesting because obviously Dan and I do a League of Ireland podcast. He's a couple of stories from today in the Irish Independent. But we haven't had Neale Fenn on since he got the Cork job.
And you slaughtered him.
I've been quite critical of the whole process. I thought he left Longford at a time when Longford needed him a lot more than Cork City. So I haven't spoken to Neale.
Are you going to go?
Have you spoken to him since?
No. Are you going to tackle him on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to just have a go at him then on air.
Say he's great.
Oh, Neale, it's lovely to have you on.
Fawn over him.
You can't do that, John.
Want to talk about the situation going forward at Cork as well, because there are persistent rumours that they're not exactly awash with cash, and that I suppose the riches that Europe brought and winning the league and all that may not really be sustained, and their form in the league has been pretty poor. But that's all coming ahead at 8:35. Eoin is in Japan, and I was actually listening last night. He was giving some spiky questions to the South African delegation.
I did see that, yeah. And he was talking to a sumo wrestler from Ireland the other day as well.
Is there a sumo wrestler from Ireland?
Sumo guy, he was from Roscommon or somewhere, wasn't he? Yeah,
what?
Yeah, I sort of watched a bit of the clip. Yeah, it was a guy who's lived...
John Gunning.
He's lived out in Japan longer than he's, I think, lived as an adult in Ireland, he was saying,
Yeah, so you move from Japan to move from Roscommon to Japan. Your name's John Gunning. Doesn't mean you become a sumo wrestler.
Well, I mean, you need to have a certain stature to do it. He didn't move out as a nippy half forward, you know what I mean? So,
imagine.
But and also more to the point, asking the serious questions at the South African press conference. It's sort of worth watching that the looks on the faces as he initially asked the question, and a couple of South Africans looking a bit. What do you do? It's one of these ones where...
I only heard it on the radio last night.
Okay, well, there's a coach and there's two players, I think, either side. And obviously it's directed at the coach, but it's one of these ones where I think it's funny, you're in a press conference sometimes and the manager's been asked something, and how does the player react? It's
like a John Delaney kind of Oireachtas committee.
You can imagine the player almost wanting to sort of go out a shot like Homer disappearing, and there is an element of that, because where do you look, and all of a sudden do you smirk, do you laugh, do you sort of look uncomfortable as it just goes on and on. But I think there was a couple of follow-up questions, but it looked like Eoin started it off.
Yeah, I am
in Japan.
Looking forward to that. Andy Dunne as well, one of the suavest, coolest voices in sport, not to mind rugby.
And Andy Dunne.
And Andy Dunne. So that's 8:50 or so. The sports news at 9:15, and then we'll have Phil Egan in to talk Champions League at 9:20, and obviously big game tonight, Real Madrid, PSG, and everything that happened last night. But let's get to the papers. I'm going to start off with... this is the Irish Daily Mail, and we have Wales shock here, and obviously turmoil after coach Howley sent home amid betting claims, and this is basically back page of all the tabloids this morning. Llorente's revenge on Liverpool. Fernando Llorente slips Napoli's second past Adrian, and it's funny, Dan. It's not funny obviously, but you've a story about Limerick and what's going on there, but it's been completely usurped by the Wales story and Rob Howley, obviously.
Yeah, I mean it's probably early days in terms of the overall case, so it's maybe hard to delve into it in great detail. But the fact is, he has been sent home. Rob Howley, it's not sort of Wales has been rocked by some kind of investigation. Now, obviously there's going to be an element of due process, but what happens here? But he has been sent home, so you can only imagine sort of covering someone being sent home, or was he sent home from a World Cup in the Japan neck of the woods? I would imagine for the lads covering the Welsh beat. With the old time difference and everything, and it was a kind of a mad story that broke around yesterday afternoon, wasn't it? Irish time, so it was pretty late at night over there.
Have you read much about it?
Yes, no. I mean, I just read that it would appear that there was a discussion between staff ahead of the decision for him to go home. So clearly within the camp, they had a discussion about how this should be handled. I don't know if you sort of on top of the full details.
I haven't actually, no, and it's just grim. But unfortunately, like the whole betting thing is so ubiquitous now. I think stuff like this is unfortunately. We're going to have to become used to it.
It's an alleged breach of World Rugby's Regulation 6. Just reading in the Star here this morning.
Did you read actually? You did listen to the news round yesterday. Dame Delaney was on about this, and like footballers basically not being able to bet on anything, and he used a kind of an unhelpful example that he couldn't bet on Chinese football. And I was like, maybe if you said like I'd like to have a bet on the Man United game, but it's absolutely ridiculous, really. Like Damien Delaney, when he was playing, couldn't have a bet, we'll say, on like Man City and Juventus. Like it's just stupid. Like it doesn't. Do you remember Conor Clifford was done for like fairly minor misdemeanors, really very minor.
Yeah,
and his name was sullied.
It's a difficult topic because like the lines have to be drawn somewhere in terms of like the integrity of a competition, and I do sort of agree. Like I mean, I know that for example, players in Ireland who have, say, participated in the Champions League qualifiers, I don't think they can bet on the Champions League competition at all.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard to see how, like, the actions of one player in Ireland, should really preclude them from having an interest in, I don't know, Karabag against Slavia Prague. But them's the rules as well. Like there is an element of education about it, and like there is like the area.
Wife, of course, can have a bet.
well, yeah. I'm sure there's resourceful people if they really want to can get around it. But the point is, like one of the biggest problems facing sport is still gambling. And there is massive stories raised around gambling in sport. It's one of the main talking points in football in terms of counteracting the influence that sort of betting syndicates are having in the game at a number of levels. So if you have a situation where there's no rules preventing athletes from punting, it may seem unfair. It may seem out of context or out of sync with the world that they inhabit. But it's a slippery slope if you sort of have a free rein either. So I can understand why you have to put rules in. But in this particular case, I don't think we have the details yet, unless I'm mistaken, of what the specific bet was on. And that's obviously going to determine, I suppose, the level of sympathy or otherwise for the person involved.
You have the star there.
The star, yeah. Well, it's deja blue, as we see. Klopp's champs beaten again in Naples. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp said last night's defeat in Naples really hurt because, of course, they lost there last year in the group stages. So Liverpool, you think about it, they were European champions, but they lost all their away games in the group stages last year. Like people say that there isn't a huge amount of suspense in the groups. There's always this line before the groups start, and nothing ever really happens in the groups. You sort of forget Liverpool and Spurs really both could have gone out last year. Liverpool went through in goal difference and goals scored.
Was that the game in Anfield against Napoli where Napoli missed an absolute sitter like right at the end basically, and these are the moments. But we will get to it later. They weren't convincing at all last night though. I thought Napoli always looked like they were on the cusp of potentially scoring in the game, and obviously got two.
Yeah, I suppose it depends. Like, I mean, I thought they looked a bit fatigued at times. I mean, Robertson for the penalty late on.
He looked tired, didn't he?
It was a bit of a maybe contested decision, but it was still a sort of a tired challenge that gave the ref a decision to make. And there's just a few moments in the game. There was a great moment with Mane and Salah with the 2-on-1 and with the recent dynamics, and Mane overplayed it. I don't know, like you wouldn't be going mad over it. You obviously think that they're going to be good enough to get through the group. They'll have the points to get through the rest of the group.
Makes it interesting.
Leaves them on the back foot a small bit.
Just want to show the front of the Times here because there's a photo of the main attraction, M-A-N-E, not the Mane attraction, but the main attraction, which is Julie Delaney, because I just wanted to reference, obviously we're not actually we're not proper journalists, we're not doing the news round of stuff that matters, we're doing sport.
Stick to yourself.
But my mate John B.
matters, a picture of a horse.
John
Is that the serious topic you wanted to discuss in the news pages?
No,
there's Morgan on the front page of the Irish Times than that.
I wanted to bring up, my mate from Portumna, John B. Keneally.
I do, but the listeners may not.
So his sister Alva works for RT, but she was at the Ploughing Championship yesterday, and she put up a tweet that at stall 399 they were having a kind of a competition for Ireland's favourite prayer. It's just like, is this Father Ted? And she goes, tea is also available. So I was like, what would Ireland's favourite prayer be? Like Hail Mary?
It's supposed to be the greatest hits, wouldn't it?
It'd be up there.
It'd be, in terms of consistent airplay, the Hail Mary.
Hail Mary.
There.
Yeah. Do you know the story behind the Hail Mary in the NFL? You know a Hail Mary pass?
No, educate me, John.
I don't actually know it either, but roughly it goes by, like, I think it was the Super Bowl, and the quarterback, like, he just threw the ball as far as he could when they needed a touchdown, probably the last throw of the game, and he just said, I threw it up in the air, I said Hail Mary, and I hope for the best, and that's kind of where the Hail Mary pass came. The Times, obviously Sean Moran is an interesting piece here. Dublin's success owes more to population than funding. And I saw, actually, I think Primetime had something on this last night about, and it must be a bit frustrating for Dublin. You know, they've done the 5 in a row. people forget that as much as, you know, they've dominated, Dublin fans want to celebrate, their players want to celebrate, and wake up Monday and Tuesday and people are just kind of having a go at their dominance or whatever. Only winning Masters would compete with Portrush Lowry. That's Shane Lowry. What do you make of that, Dan?
Which part?
The Lowry.
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be hard for him. I think the challenge for Lowry, how do you match that high? I mean, Irish Open on the island, or sorry, British Open on the island, or sorry, the Open, it's not the British Open, it's the Open Championship on the island. Like, I know his Ryder Cup, like he's never played in the Ryder Cup before, so that's probably a real focus for him, but there is an element of guys who sometimes they win that one massive tournament, and how do you almost lift yourself to go again? So that is going to be the next part of his evolution, to actually deal with the pressure of being like that. So
a couple of things before I actually get to that. We have the Hail Mary trivia is in, and the term became widespread after a December 28, 1975 NFL playoff game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings, when Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach, a Roman Catholic and a fan of The Godfather Part 2, oh, we really needed to put that in. But he was a Catholic.
He'd have his own say on the favourite pair.
He would. I was just thinking that. If Roger's still alive and is listening, what's your favourite prayer, Roger? Whose character, Fredo, had popularised the phrase, said about his game-winning touchdown pass to wide receiver Drew Pearson, I closed my eyes and said a Hail Mary, and just data via Wikipedia there at the bottom, as if that were necessary. The other thing is the sumo wrestler from Roscommon, that is on our social channels. You can catch that on YouTube.
There we go. Yeah, we got the Mirror this morning. Chumps, straightforward there. Liverpool.
That's a bit lazy,
I think
isn't it?
Well, it's not.
Chumps.
It's a bit harsh.
No, but like it's a bit like, oh, lads, what will we come up with for a headline here? Oh, deadlines, just throw anything at it. A bit disappointing. Chumps.
They're under pressure.
Yeah.
It's late in the day. Finished around 8 o'clock kickoffs now, so there's like 15 fewer minutes to deal with. Champs,
what's the story with that's to cater for the earlier games? Because it was
the 5:55 and the 8 o'clock now, so they've mixed things up a bit in the Champions League.
You know the way you're getting up mad early this morning. It was like wanted to get in an episode of Marcella before I went to bed on the old Netflix.
What's Marcella?
It's kind of like a crime show based in London with a lot of murders. It's very hard to know what's going on, and I've lost it actually. Don't know what's going on. But I was like, it's 10 o'clock already. Couldn't believe it wasn't like 20 to 10. Do you know the way? And that, when you're getting up at 6 in the morning and you want to watch Marcella.
Some serious hot takes on the passing of time from you this morning.
I know. What have we got here anyway?
Later evenings.
Another one.
The Examiner Sport front page, Reds trip up. Again, a picture story based on Liverpool's defeat in Napoli last night. Again, more stuff below on the Valley of Tears, Wales World Cup bid thrown into disarray, and screen time, why Colin O'Rourke hopes Joe Brolly will return to TV punditry. Briefly,
actually, on the Joe Brolly thing. Any take on that? I know you're not mad into the guy.
No, I mean, Joe Brolly is entertaining. I mean, I really enjoyed his column actually in the Sunday.
Brilliant writer.
Is amazingly good. I do think sometimes people have a slight resistance to change when it comes to like the traditional punditry panels being broken up. Like there was a lot of grief when the Dunphy-Giles panel was broken up from the RTE days, but I mean, I didn't necessarily feel that. I felt like that sometimes something reaches the end of a cycle.
Who is your favourite football pundit?
I don't know, actually.
McDonnell?
No.
Well, overrated?
A bit bland, to be honest. Samey. I'm not sure. I don't necessarily know if I have.
I think you're good.
Thanks, John. That's really nice.
Well, I don't think you're about the. I think you're everything Joe Brolly isn't. I think you haven't. You just call it as you see it. Whereas Joe Brolly was more about the sort of the performance and like the hype.
But that's what of course people want entertainment sometimes, and that's ultimately what he brought. There was a wild card element to it. That's what he brought, like talking about him like he's dead.
More NFL analogies in the wild card there.
It was excellent, but I know people. At the same time, I do listen to people who like follow the GAA, and they felt maybe that first Kerry Dublin game that there was an element of pantomime about the whole thing and didn't necessarily get any analysis of it. So that's the flip side of it, and people get used to it. I think particularly in Ireland we love our characters.
Yeah.
There comes a point, obviously, where you need a balance and a bit more analysis of the game too.
We will get Dan's favourite football pundit by the end of the show. Should also reiterate, it's not really follow the GAA. That's kind of like saying follow the FAI. It's like follow Gaelic games.
Gaelic games, yeah. But I don't like using the term GAA because that's a bit...
It's kind of a bit Dubby. This is the Guardian, which focuses on, obviously, Barkley misses penalty as Chelsea lose to Valencia with their young side, and Stones blow. City facing defensive crisis as injury list mounts up. It's going to be interesting as well. And obviously Howley, the Mirror Dan has already had, and this is the Times, Wales. This is the London Times. Obviously Wales coach sent home in betting shame, and champions humbled on bad night for English.
Yeah, I've got the...
Here we go, Dan, on the Indo. Box office stuff.
Here, yeah, on the Indo, injury hit Ireland.
Like you actually own the paper. It
would be nice to. Injury hit Ireland still simmering. That's Rory in Chiba with Reece Rullock, who was up yesterday or 2 days ago, depending on time difference, speaking about a sense of niggling, I suppose, frustration from certain defeats and stuff that they've had. The squad is in good health and spirits. And below, the CPA concern with vote on second tier. Colin Keys, the Club Players Association, concern over the GA's decision to press ahead with the vote on the second tier championship. And I have a story here. Actually, the joys of newspaper review here, that we have 3 editions in the Indo. So there's like an early edition, there's a sort of a secondary edition, which is the main edition, which is this one here, and there's a slightly later edition. So I have updated this in the later edition. I had a line about just no confirmation on Stephen Kenny's return home from Sweden. I gather he actually is back in the country, so he's back home. So there we go.
That's mad, yeah.
He was due back home. No, the line was he was due back home this week after taking it in Sweden, and I gather he's back in the country already, which is no big deal.
I read your piece and I was like, there's a little bit of a slightly kind of worrying tone to this, in that, like, you know, he's not actually back out of Sweden yet, and
no, I think he's back. Yeah, I think
the later edition would be like slightly more.
Yeah, but it's just one of these things that, like, obviously the initial, he took it last Wednesday and we'd heard nothing since then. So there comes a point where, well, actually, is he back home?
What's going on?
Not necessarily a big deal, but he's back home. I think back to work, and full steam ahead for Italy and Iceland next month. The Sun, I've got the Sun here. Sod's Law. That's pretty good. Sod's Law. Did you get that? Fernando Llorente.
Very handsome man, Llorente.
Got a revenge.
In terms of handsome footballers. I was actually trying to convince my girlfriend of this last night, and she wasn't really having it.
Handsome footballers. Yeah. Favourite prayer. We've covered all the...
Favourite pundit. Haven't really actually answered any of them.
No, we haven't. No. Llorente getting his revenge on Liverpool, because he was obviously on the Spurs team that lost in the Champions League final in May. And there was a reference to Mason Mount as well, being hurt in the Blues flop. We haven't really talked about Chelsea, but they lost to Valencia last night.
Didn't see that game. Obviously, they have a big job ahead. Have we done the Sun?
We've done the Sun, yeah.
We've done the Indo. Seem to have 2 versions of basically the same.
I've got the Guardian here as well. So
and the Herald as well.
The Howley sent home from World Cup amid betting investigation again. The Wales World Cup campaign being thrown into disarray. I
do want to mention the Herald because just on the basis that they were tagging me consistently this week, on the basis that Fair City was having 30 years of Fair City, free 24-hour souvenir magazine inside.
Do you want to clarify why that would be?
They tagged me because a bit like Max Power in The Simpsons, I've kind of become Johnny Ward, the actor, of Love, Hate and Fair City fame, and I had to kind of point out to the Herald that they just kept tagging me in this.
Well, I've been tagged. I keep getting tagged in posts aimed at Daniel O'Donnell. So there was something to do with Magella's countrywide escapes, or I don't know what it was.
Tell us more.
I don't know. It's obviously Daniel O'Donnell's wife had a show.
Magella have a favourite prayer?
I'd say she would now.
Yeah.
I'd say she might be hard to narrow it down to one. But there was a show on RTE about, I don't know, something show of some description. I was being tagged in it all the time. You know, it was like coming up tonight. Magella's, countrywide homes or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, and it was very hard to clarify. Just, can you leave me out of this? Well, so you're Johnny Ward hell. Well, it's felt by others.
The really kind of weird part of this was, it's obviously quite funny, but Johnny Ward's father actually passed away over the past year, and I was getting people saying, "I'm really sorry about your dad," and I was actually initially "Is everything all right here?" And I had to, and I was saying, it's an awful tragedy for Johnny Ward, but if I ever do meet him, the other Johnny Ward, I'm going to say, by the way, when your father died, and I'm sure in the passage of time, he'll probably, it's just a Max Power situation, the names. But anyway, the Herald had a bit of a laugh about it.
Who'd have thought that Ireland could have 2
Johnny Wards.
It
has a lot of wards.
Of such standing.
Yeah. Anyway, that is the papers, and I think now we are going to. We have a lot coming up on the show over the next hour and a half. But first of all, the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix of Darts returns. Have you been to the darts?
I haven't. No.
Good night out. You'd really need drink on you. Or if you don't want to be offended by people kind of throwing drink at you and falling over you. Went to the darts once in the point and only had a couple of pints, and it was one of the biggest regrets of my sporting life.
Just to be clear, not everyone needs to go on a complete bender.
You do, really, you do.
It does look to be looks to be a part of the experience.
We have to clarify what, Joe, sorry? Oh yeah, sorry, the winner of this competition is going to have a much better experience than I did. I'm not sure what this competition is, but the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix of Darts returns to City West Convention Centre from the 6th to the 12th of October. It's only like less than a month away. All this week on OTB AM, with thanks to the PDC, we're giving you the chance to win the ultimate darting experience. You and a guest will win 2 VIP tickets to the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix final, plus a night stay at the City West Hotel, including breakfast on Saturday of the 12th of October. Now, I should clarify, I actually did have a good night up until the point that people just started getting a little bit drunker than I was and my mate, Julian. But we had a good night. He's big into the darts. Everyone was booing Phil Taylor, actually, which I thought was a bit... I felt like uneasy about it.
Really?
Yeah, I know, like, he's not a particularly likeable character, but I was just
that's the reason.
Yeah, what's the reason?
He's not the most beloved character. I felt the whole point of it is like there's a wrestling element to it. You need your villains. You need your heels.
Who?
That's the expression for the bad guy.
Right. We're also giving away a pair of tickets to Friday's semi-finals each morning this week. So there are 2 steps to enter the competition. One is to share OTB AM whenever you're watching or listening. Retweet if you're tweeting this competition, and tell us who won the 2017 World Grand Prix of Darts. And I have the answer here. I wouldn't have known that, but probably wouldn't know it either.
No.
Tickets can be purchased at ticketmaster.ie and search darts. Now, so that's basically it from that. And assessing Liverpool's development under Jurgen Klopp, Damien Delaney, Damien's become a bit of a regular fixture. I think were you on for his first show?
Possibly so, yeah. I think it was a Saturday afternoon. He was sort of looking very relaxed.
Very relaxed.
On Skype. He was practically had his feet up while doing a Skype.
The last image I saw of Damien Delaney, he was wearing like something like he was in a spa or something. He was wearing like the...
Oh, he came on in a bathrobe. Yeah.
The bathrobe. Anyway.
Not in studio, though.
Assessing Liverpool... No, that'd be a bit strange.
Because he was here last night, just to clarify.
Yeah. Assessing Liverpool's development under Jurgen Klopp. Actually, do you remember there was a joke about the hologram at the end? Like, that was the best Skype ever. What was on afterwards? But Quantum Leap, which I hadn't seen in years. Scott Bakula. Here we go. Assessing Liverpool's development under Jurgen Klopp, Dame Delaney highlight the importance of Fabinho to their defensive stability. That's coming up after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes but for you in the community. Check out our amazing offers for families with kids camps, sport academies and birthday parties. Or for adults, why not join our gym with a 50-metre pool? Or your club, school, friends can book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities, including our athletics track, soccer, basketball or badminton courts and many more. Check us out on sportirelandcampus.ie.
Join Bruce Betting now for a risk-free first bet up to €100. That's right. New Irish accounts can enjoy a risk-free first bet up to €100. So if your first bet loses, we'll refund your stake with a free bet. Now that's giving you more. Bruce Betting. In-store, online and now on your phone. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
OTB AM.
So what you don't want to do is kind of centre-back get pulled out and then ends up, mishmash. And that's what happened with Henderson a lot, because he was putting defenders in very, very... what's the best way of putting this? He was asking to make high-risk decisions all the time.
Put him in precarious conditions.
Right, where you're kind of making reasonably high-risk decisions. And as a defender, you're going to get caught out quite regularly. Whereas with Fabinho in there as a defender, you're minimising those number of high-risk decisions.
What makes Spurs better than anybody else in your view?
They play with 2 number 6s.
Right.
So Spurs almost have 2 centre-backs and 2 number 6s. So they have that box in the middle of the park. And I remember, when we used to play against Spurs, we always spoke about that. And that box very rarely got broken. So it was always Wanyama and Dyer, you know, or it was always Dembele and Dyer, you know, and then they play with 3 number 10s, so you'd have like your 2 wingers tucked in and Dele Alli as the actual number 10, and then your wingers are providing the width, and you'd Harry Kane stretching the pitch. So, but when the ball turned over against Spurs, you had nowhere to go with it, because you were looking at Dembele and Dyer, and then behind them was Vertonghen and the other boy. And what ended up happening then was you had to go square to keep possession. But as soon as you go square, then they're happy because they just fill straight back in, and then all of a sudden they get their shape back, and then they press from that shape. So that's how diligent they were. Liverpool never played with anyone. Sometimes, so when the ball turned over, and I know this because we had some great results against Liverpool, when the ball turned over, we were all week just saying, first ball, fire into the number 10, because there's a fair chance there'll be nobody there.
Graham Hunter, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
That's a very personal question at this time in the morning.
It is.
Shall we just say smarter than the average bear, something like that?
It reminds me of that gag where it's like, you know, the way when you're in the States, you know, it's kind of cursory for everyone in the service sector. It's like, have a nice day. And like the logical response from the likes of me is like, sorry, I've made other plans.
You see, this is one of the best interests I've ever had on Off the Ball. I like this branch of the conversation. You can count yourself very lucky that I haven't used Anglo-Saxon language already. The restraint has been immense on my part. But every time we speak, let's begin like this. I'll keep you fully up to date as exactly how I am each day.
Daniel McDonnell is in as well.
Oh yeah, hi Graham. I'm fine this morning. You know, we're all good here. John,
Dan, I want to ask because I can see, man, you look robust, almost Roman.
Robust?
Roman, yeah.
You look. I know.
Go for Roman over robust.
I'm not sure about like you wake up in the morning, your wife says, "Wow, you look robust." Wow.
You know we're on air now when you talk about your marital situation.
I know.
Just move on to the football.
It's a lot more interesting though than talking about like you know, Barcelona and Dortmund and so on. But we will talk about that.
When you're talking, it's not. No.
What you make of it last night? Obviously, the main narrative was Messi wasn't starting. The kid Fatty, 16 years of age, tough introduction for him as well. But a game that neither of us actually saw in the studio. But what was it like, Graham?
Exactly as expected. Barcelona are not only, for those who dip in and out of Football Club Barcelona, don't be bringing your golden memories. They don't conserve the ball the way that they used to. Not just age, not father time, but Busquets, although he was one of standout performers for Barcelona, is no longer surrounded by Xavi and Iniesta. He didn't even have Rakitic through the majority of this season helping him patrol. And therefore, although Rakitic came on yesterday, Busquets is being pressed and caught. The possession stats Barcelona enjoy now generally are because other teams want to suck them in and then counter-attack them rather than Barca dominating the tempo of a game or managing a game. And therefore, what we saw, I think, was them being smart because they're very technical. But in many occasions, Dortmund were able to penetrate them, were able to produce power plays that Barcelona didn't particularly like. Almost all the good chances fell to Dortmund. Brandt hitting the bar. Penalty, which I thought was well won by Sancho, really dumb by Semedo, just about right, I think. Ter Stegen produced the best performance for Football Club Barcelona, not just saving the penalty, but 2 other big blocks against his former Borussia Mönchengladbach academy teammate, Marco Reus. Overall, I think anybody who doesn't like Football Club Barcelona, what they stand for, the fact that they win so much all the time, will have come away cursing them, shaking their fist at the television, thinking that's one of the 9 lives used up. They will think that's a really, really good point to start the group with.
They did 1 shot on target. I'm just looking at the stats here. They had 59% possession, which is obviously, you know, pretty laudable away from home. 1 shot on target, Dan. It does look like they're kind of slightly on the wane. Yeah,
I don't know, like, Graham, because I'm interested. I watched the game against Real Betis, and they had that sort of period after half-time where they turned it on for, 15, 20 minutes, and they blew them away. And they've scored 5 against Valencia, so you would look at that and think, OK, there's still a certain attacking personality or there's a certain Barcelona style there, but, I mean, you're sort of presenting a slightly different image, I think.
First of all, the seasons have begun to take their toll on Luis Suarez. Domestically, he's still fantastic. He's a really, really bright footballer, Suarez. Not just streetwise and master of dark arts, but really, really clever. In Europe, the stat that he hasn't now scored away from home for 4 years is for a reason. It's not a fluke. He's just back from injury right now. He's 32. There's a couple of kilos more than at his best days. He's a little bit slower. He's easier to shut down. The fact that Barca don't control possession means that very often he's been given the ball in situations where it's a chase or a wrestle for the ball rather than into a channel or right to his feet. And so this phenomenally talented 16-year-old, who'll be 17 in Halloween, who becomes Barcelona's youngest ever player in UEFA competition by playing in Signal Iduna last night, is very, very special, very smart. He's been well trained. He uses the ball well. He's got a trick. He's quick. He's a centre forward who's converted to the left wing, so he can play centrally and score. He's comfortable with that. Or he can cut in off the left. But last night in Germany, he was played on the right by Valverde. I'd like to pretend to you I know why. I thought it was a mistake. Only when he was changed to the left did he make impact. So Ansu didn't have, even for a 16-year-old, a night that represented where he's at in his development. Griezmann worked his socks off, but very little clean possession whatsoever. So this one shot on target, again, is a horrible stat to hear for the first time. If you've been watching Barcelona, particularly this season, particularly the way they played for half the game at San Mamés in losing to Athletic, the 45 minutes against Osasuna, and I know I'm not talking now about their performance in Dortmund last night, but for 45 minutes against Osasuna, a newly promoted side, they played the worst football I've seen from them for 17 or 18 years. So times are difficult. They're definitely remodelling the side. They're not quite clear about their best 11. They've got handfuls of players who are not yet fully match sharp. Their pre-season was truncated by people playing in competitions, having extra holidays. So there's better to come. There's definitely, this is not the end of Football Club Barcelona. When they play well and they spark at the Camp Nou, remember the difference between carving out a win against Liverpool at the Camp Nou, which they didn't deserve, but still carving out a 3-0 win, and then being pumped at Anfield. You'll see elements of that most of the season. Away performances, and final word to Messi on this, while he's been injured, he gave a massive interview to Diario Sport, 5-6 pages, the biggest in his life. The key, he said, to winning the Champions League again, which I want, which Barca want, we haven't won it for a long time, is scoring goals away from home in Europe. We're not good enough at that. They weren't even close to being good enough at that again in Dortmund last night. Until they sort it, teams will bully them when Barcelona are on the road.
That's interesting. So Messi, this 5-6 page interview, was there much else in it? Is there any theory as to why he gave this interview now?
Huge, absolutely huge. First of all, it was reported all summer that it was Messi who said, I must have Neymar. He said, well, I don't run the club. That's been proven before. We gave our opinion, the senior players, about whether Neymar should come or not. So in other words, it was a nice way of saying, look, I don't dictate, but I told the club we want Neymar. The question was, did the club try hard enough? Messi's like, well, look, I know they negotiated. I don't know if they tried hard enough or not. He goes into huge detail about it's a good idea that Carlos Puyol comes back to the football management of the club, not the coach's job. He goes into detail about how much he still remains hungry to stay at Football Club Barcelona, because it was revealed in the week 10 days prior to this huge interview that he has a clause in his contract since his last renewal that each season he's free to leave free at his own behest. He can walk away from his contract every summer from now until the end of the deal. Barca want to renegotiate the deal to amplify the years. And he was saying, well, look, even with that freedom, Barca's my home. I want to be here. It's a choice. I actively want to stay. But, and then the buts came up, but we have to start winning. We have to start scoring away from home. It was a really clear message that he yearns for the Champions League, that he doesn't think that they're yet in a good enough state for it, that he wanted Neymar to come in, play with him. And he mentions Griezmann, and because there's a big swell of informed gossip, not rumour, that when Neymar was potentially able to move and Barcelona's ability to match the price Paris Saint-Germain were saying was a bare minimum, the 100-something million that they spent on Griezmann, Messi wanted spent on Neymar. Doesn't mean that Griezmann and Messi are going to be at war. Messi won't welcome him. Griezmann's been talking Messi up until they finally get the chance to play together. which they hadn't until last night. But Messi wanted the money spent on Neymar rather than Griezmann. That's just a fact of life that is confirmed by the interview and reading between the lines. It's unusual to see, even as captain of the club, and speaking that clearly. But I thought it was healthy. He's changed over the years, lads. He didn't used to like these situations. Now he's much more comfortable with it, much more interesting. He's 32 now.
You obviously tip Liverpool to win the Champions League. They're third favourites. Barca are still second favourites. Is your kind of confidence waned a bit after last night in Naples?
You serious?
No.
I also said in looking at the group that Naples was a place where I didn't really expect Liverpool to do much more than get a point at best. I think that Liverpool's beginning to the season domestically, okay, last night it didn't really work for them. They might have got more out of the game, but I went to watch them in Switzerland against Lyon, went to the training camp, spoke to a couple of players. To my mind, it's a little bit surprising they've started so well domestically, given how chopped up their pre-season was, how few of the players, the big players, were there at the same time, building up reserves of fitness and sharpness. And therefore, I think you can lose at Napoli. Napoli are a side that, there's been a 7-goal thriller in each of their first 2 Serie A matches, including a 4-3 against Juventus. They're really, really dangerous. They've toughened up. It's a horrible place to play. Liverpool don't particularly enjoy it there. They were handsomely beaten by Napoli in pre-season. That they've lost like that is you stubbed your toe. That's it. You haven't broken a limb. I like their hunger. I trust it when the players tell me we're capable of doing more than last season. And I think they are. And I look across Europe, they've got to punch their weight. They've got to fulfill those promises. But I don't think they've been sated. That's my point. I do think that the Premier League's a priority. And I also tipped them to win the Premier League this summer, building into this season. So outright definite going to win it? No. But do I think Liverpool on the day are capable of beating every side that's in their way? I do, and therefore, if I believe that, why wouldn't they be one of my favourites to win the title again?
So what does 85 goals in all competitions last season mean to you?
One of my better performances at 5-a-side.
No, that's not what it means. It's what Neymar, Mbappe and Cavani scored last season, none of whom is playing tonight for PSG against Real Madrid.
No, that's right. It's interesting that they've found, in Choupo-Moting, they've found an alternate scorer. It's interesting that immediately you take Cavani away from the side. I'm not so sure about Neymar. That brutal ability to win in any circumstances, which they showed domestically last season, has gone away. There's a time now when they're going to be reunited, those three. It won't be tonight. Zidane coming to town with a Real Madrid side that is... It's a really fascinating game because Real Madrid are... how would I phrase it best? They're beginning to play a brand of football which is very attractive, but they're only doing it... It's like when you've got your batteries and your remote control, and it'll change the channel 6 times out of 10. The other 4, nothing happens.
Oh, God, I hate that.
65-minute matches. And for 65 minutes, particularly in the last outing, it can look mesmerising because the fluidity of the ball movement, the sharpness, the one-touch passing, Benzema's form's exceptional. James Rodriguez probably hasn't played better for Real Madrid than he did at the weekend against Levante when he was mesmerising. It was a plus for Real Madrid in that I think they were going to definitely play Mendy. He looks in good form. He'll be better defensively at left back. Marcelo's a minor injury. The injury list has been eternal. As many injuries as Paris Saint-Germain front three had goals last season. But there's something about Real Madrid whereby they're still vulnerable. They still concede too many times. But there's a quickness and a sharpness about them now, growing, that really at no stage they showed last season, either under Lopetegui or Solari or Zidane. And Zidane's part of the season finished so weakly last term that I think they were real. And he was so ticked off, so hacked off that he didn't get Pogba and that his president didn't try hard enough, that there were real concerns about whether this second project for Zidane was going to click. right now, if you're going to watch that Paris Saint-Germain Real Madrid match, I think you can be, albeit that Ramos is out at the back, it'll be an interesting one for Militao, who's come from Porto to play next to Varane at centre-back. I think there's real entertainment on hand. And while I'm not going to be wildly tipping Real Madrid for any trophies just yet, the potential is that if you come back in 4, 5, 6 weeks, it might be time to say, oh, look, this project is really taking shape. They're a bit more rigorous in the central midfield. Toni Kroos getting a new contract last May, I couldn't believe. He was deadly dull, flat-footed, and frankly lazy last season. This season, it's been quite fun watching him. He's kind of interested again. So there's something happening at Real Madrid, and if Paris Saint-Germain aren't on their mettle tonight, even with I guess it's Keylor in goals, so that's going to be guaranteed. He'll give an Olympic performance just to say to Real Madrid, hiya, you shouldn't have let me go. It should be good football. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday playing five-a-side. Thanks for that, Graham. 85, baby, 85.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the remote there. There's nothing worse than with the Sky remote now, where, you know, when you're fast forward and rewind, it goes +2, +6, +12, +30. And if you have a bogey remote, that, like, it takes a lot of pressing.
Stuck in the wrong one.
But then it gets to where you want it, and you're trying to go back frantically back, and it's going like minutes ahead, and you're like, this is just so frustrating. It's just like, I need a new remote. You know? Yeah, it's one of life's great
first
struggles. World problems.
I'd say it probably is, John.
Do you remember TVs before remotes?
Vaguely.
You don't
remember? You sort of twist it to turn it on.
Yeah, we used to.
We just remember you had the old 4 channels out in Galway. To be honest, you probably had to like dial up to get to the next station.
Well, I wouldn't say that. We did have a TV that was so bad that it was like Onslow and Keeping Up Appearances. You had to whack it because the screen just went. But for more serious matters, Italian football once again engulfed by another instance of public racism, and Paddy Agnew outlined why we can expect no great urgency for change in Italy.
Paddy, I want to talk to you as well about this incident that Lukaku has found himself at the centre of, particularly after scoring that penalty away to Cagliari on the 1st of September. We all figured, you know, given we all heard the chants and we all heard what was aimed at him and we all heard what he had to say in the press afterwards, that some punishment would flow from the FIGC, that, you know, Cagliari would maybe face a partial stadium closure, would face a stadium closure, that there'd be some kind of fine. They seem to today have gotten away exceptionally lightly.
Yeah, they've got away scot-free, practically. Yeah. There's a problem here. We've talked about this on your programme before, and I've talked about it in many programmes. It's a problem of perception. The Italian perception of what is racism, what's racist abuse, and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable is a bit out of kilter with a lot of mainline Western thinking, frankly, at the moment. And people, you know, when, for example, when Lukaku took that penalty, he was booed at, and there were monkey noises, monkey chants shouted at him in Cagliari. He expressed his dismay on his Instagram site, and if he did, the Inter fans, his own club, said, no, Lukaku, old son, you've got this wrong. That wasn't racism. That was just the way that people would shout at any player in an opposing team, which clearly isn't. Clearly isn't so. We know it was racism. End of story. But people in Italy and the authorities in Italy are slow to really grasp this particular bull by the horn.
There we go, John.
Yeah, that I think we've just lost it, have we? It's funny though.
I think you've lost it, John.
I thought we had a lot longer there to go. I've been to games in Italy, and what Paddy was saying there is completely on the button. Their concept of racism is, as he says, out of kilter.
That's sort of it's extraordinary. I mean,
like Italy, it's not like, you know, some really backward country or whatever.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, Italy's politics at the moment is still quite complex as well. I mean, there's a certain brand of politician that still does very well in Italy, and we've seen that. So it's not out of sync with maybe other things going on in Europe. But I mean, the stuff from Cagliari in particular. Like you sort of associate, when you sort of grow up and you hear of, like, say, racist abuse at a game, you always assume that it's just a couple of idiots, you know, making comments. But you can't even you can't say, oh, it's just a minority, which is often the excuse that's given. Now, unfortunately, a small minority of fans let themselves down. In these
that's
cases,
a cop-out.
In these cases, but that's not even true. In these instances, that it's like it's an entire section of a stadium. And I mean, like, there's been some pretty iffy comments from people at the sharp end of like football administration in Italy as well. So I mean, it's just a massive cultural problem, and I think when that's the case, I'm not sure how even like blanket bans and punishments would go down, because I'm not sure if there would be enough broader appetite to accept them.
Yeah, I don't really know what the answer is. We're very shortly going to have Cork City boss Neale Fenn on. Just before we get to that, tickets are on sale for one of the biggest raffles ever run in Ireland. Tickets will cost €100, but the top prize is an apartment worth 300 grand, which must mean some sort of gate in Dublin 6, or maybe a toilet or something like that, but hopefully it's actually a house. This is a cross-code initiative involving Cork City FC, Douglas and Kinsale AFC, with funds being distributed equally. The final few weeks to enter the draw, you can get your tickets on winagaff.ie.
It's a good promotion.
Gaff with 2 Fs. Neale Fenn actually might know where the house is. Neale, where is this 300 grand house?
Oh, it's a beautiful house in right in Cork City Centre. So it's a lovely part of the city called Ballintemple.
Lovely. I spent some time in Cork recently, actually, and I was quite taken by it. And so were you, because you left Longford Town in their time of need and jumped ship and went to Cork City when they didn't really need you till next season.
Well, that's one way of putting it. My way of putting it would be that, I got offered an opportunity to be a full-time manager in a Premier Division team in the League of Ireland, an old club of mine where I had a great time. So it was a difficult decision to make. I loved my time at Longford, but I felt that I only had one choice really in the end.
Yeah, was it a case of, if I don't sort of take this now, I might not have it at the start of next season, or did you feel compelled to grasp that opportunity when it came up at such a club as big as Cork City, obviously?
Yeah, exactly. As I've said before, Premier Division jobs don't come around that often, and when they do come around, it's a difficult decision to make. But at the end of the day, I just felt that Cork City was a great club, a fantastic opportunity for me, and unfortunately, I couldn't turn it down.
Are you still, when you look at Longford now, and they're kind of on the cusp of the playoffs, so you kind of keeping very close to what's going on there? Dara Doyle's obviously involved, and they're getting ready to make a battle to get into the Premier Division. But I guess some of your heart is still there as well. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I speak to Dara all the time. Always checking up how the boys are doing. It's he's got a good squad there, and Dara's a very good coach, and I'm sure that he will guide them well into the playoffs, and I hope they do really well.
It's quite staggering though, just looking at the table. Cork City have 30 points from 30 games this season, 1 point a game, which is an appallingly bad average considering where the club has come from. I was at the game just when you were about to take over against Galway United when you were poor, but things haven't improved since in terms of results. Have you been shocked by the start that sort of you've had, or is it just a rebuilding process?
A little bit of both, really. Obviously, the results since I've come in have been disappointing. I wouldn't say the performances have been particularly bad. Just aspects of our game need to be improved. Defending certainly, and not just the defenders, but defending as a group. But obviously, they've had a bad season. The drop off this year has been staggering, really. That and no one can quite put their finger on it. But yeah, it is a little bit of a rebuild as well for next season. It's about getting in there now, seeing who we want to keep, who we can let go, who we need to try and bring up from the underage, and try and get the recruitment right for next season.
Yeah, because Neale, I understand there's quite a few players out of contract. I mean, at this stage, like, what kind of numbers have you got signed up for next year, and where do you actually stand with that rebuild?
Well, there's excluding the kind of under 19 players, there's 3 of the present first team squad are under contract. So it's going to take a bit of a job to get some of those signed back up. I'd like to keep some of them, and then go around and try and recruit players like managers do at this time of year.
Where is the confidence in the players as well? Because it was just to me against Galway anyway, they looked like players that just had kind of lost self-belief.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't in charge for that game, so as far as I can see, it was just a poor performance. But Galway are on a bit of a run. They're not doing too bad. So I think you don't want to be too disrespectful to Galway and say that Cork City should go over there and roll them over, because Shamrock Rovers found it a very difficult place to go as well, and I found it difficult to go this year with my Longford team. So it's not an easy place to go. But yeah, you're right. They didn't play well, and I don't know. I wasn't at the club then. What I've seen, there's good players there. It's just trying to put my ideas across and get what I want out of the team and try and get it all together and gel it all together until the end of the season at least.
Yeah, like how were the morale levels when you went in, Neale? Because, I mean, it is, as you mentioned, the drop-off. I mean, when you consider the level that Cork have operated at for the last 5-6 seasons to challenge Dundalk every year almost. I mean, did you come into a group where, people, sort of the heads were down? I mean, have you seen that in games when you've conceded? I mean, I'm thinking of the Waterford game at home where you're 1-0 up and you sort of end up losing the game 2-1, and it's a very un-Cork sort of type of result and thing to do at Turner's Cross. I mean, is there some kind of issues with morale there?
I think so. I think a little bit. As they say, it's an old saying that winning is a habit, and so's losing as well. So there's no memory of once you get in front to go and win the game and to drive on and keep doing well. But is confidence low? I would say it is. They haven't been getting the results. They've been getting a little bit of stick from people around the place. So confidence is low. So we're just trying to build that back up again. Performances have improved. I felt that for most of the game, for the most part, we were good against Waterford. It was just the goals we conceded really, and against Dundalk we went up there and with a lot of injuries and give a good show of ourselves. So confidence is definitely coming back and performances are improving.
Have you got a sense from the club of I suppose your ability to compete? Because obviously come the winter time now, I mean, it's well known, it's a small market. Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers are in a very strong position to snap up or maintain a lot of the better players. I mean, have the club given you an indication of how competitive you can be in that regard?
Yeah, we're going to be competitive to where we're going to be. We're not going to be able to compete with the Dundalks and the Shamrock Rovers as well in terms of wages. So that we're not going to be up there, but we feel that we can be in and around the kind of next wave of teams and be competitive at that level, certainly.
Yeah, because there are, I suppose, lots of rumours and chat behind the scenes that Cork are facing into a precarious situation next season. How worried are you in terms of the finance? Are you fairly assured that things will be okay, as you say, to battle for something like a European spot?
Yeah, I think this club and most clubs in the League of Ireland don't rely on a financial backer, so they're reliant on the local community and clubs and spectators and getting crowds, and obviously the crowds are down and they rely on sponsorship as well, which is why this winter gaff is such an important part for the club. So once the crowds start picking up, then it's hard to tell what the financial position will be in, but we'll be in and around the kind of level that we need to be with the likes of the Sligos, the Bows, the Pats, that kind of level, I'd say.
In terms of players coming through, I just thought it was something that maybe under John Caulfield's reign, as successful as it wasn't something that was kind of very regular, and that all these young players coming through, and that must have encouraged you against Dundalk, that you had to rely on sort of second string players. But what young players are coming through, or how strong is your underage, your 19s or 17s coming up?
Well, the 19s are very strong, but as you know, it's there's a big gap between the 19s and the first team, especially the Premier Division. So there's a lot of good crop of young 19s there. Whether they'll be ready for the first team, is it too soon for them? Possibly on a couple of them, but there's lads in the first team squad at the moment. Alec Byrne, Conor McCarthy, Ronan Hurley, Darragh Crowley have all come from the 19s, are in the first team squad at the moment. I'm sure I've missed a couple there as well, but a couple are injured as well that we've got high hopes for. So next season we will have a higher proportion of younger players from the 19s and from the first year pros at the club, mixed in with obviously a couple of older players and a bit more experience.
Yeah, I mean, Neale, just you were obviously at Cork as a player during some very successful times, and I think it's, you mentioned like why you had to move from Longford, why it was such a big opportunity that you couldn't turn down. That I don't think people sometimes up here necessarily grasp how big a deal Cork City is down there. But I just wonder when like results, you've maybe had a couple of slow results to start off. Is it a different experience? Are people stopping you in the street to ask you about things? Is that like something that's very noticeable change from Longford, this sort of most day-to-day responsibility of almost representing the club?
Yeah, definitely, and it takes a little bit of getting used to that. Wherever you go, people want to talk about the club, and when you're doing well, that's fine. But when you're not doing so well, it becomes a bit of a burden to you. But no, everyone would just. I think people understand that the position the club are in at the moment, and the position I'm in, and where we want to be. So they're being very helpful and very supportive of us at the moment, and really just trying to see through this season and have a rebuild for next season and take it from there and see where we go.
Troy Parrott in the Spurs squad, I believe, as well.
Brilliant, great news, great for Ireland, great for Tottenham that they could bring a young player in, and it just shows that the belief that Pochettino has in him. You know, he's a great player, and hopefully we'll see him in a senior team soon. Yeah,
you're playing Finn Harps on Friday night, just to wrap up, and a game that you don't want to be losing just to stay out of that possibility of getting into the relegation sort of battle.
Oh, that's a reality. You know, that's what I'm looking at. We need to get a result on Friday, 100%. We certainly cannot lose it, but we'd like to win it to give ourselves that little bit of distance away from Finn Harps. But yeah, it's definitely a game we need to win, and the club hasn't had a home win in a while, so it's important that we do that.
Can you actually win this gaff as well, by the way, yourself? Is it like Father Ted, where the organisers won the last prize we had? Is that possible, or have Cork looked after your accommodation needs?
I think they've probably put it as part of my contract that I'll win it. So no,
I just clarify that before you get into anything,
No, they are looking after me. They are looking after me with a place, a lovely place. So I'm happy about that.
Best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks, lads. Pleasure.
Yeah, so it's one of the biggest ever raffles run in Ireland. Have you ever had any luck in raffles, Sam?
No, I entered one at the weekend down in Clare, the Ennis Timon GA lottery. It was a good prize as well. But it's one of these things that when you leave, you kind of wonder, how I get the call if I actually win.
Yeah, I remember being at a hurling game, Galway were playing in Tullamore a year or two ago, and they were selling tickets outside, and the prize was a local heifer.
Right.
I was just like, I've no issue really buying it, but what would I do with a heifer?
You wouldn't bring it to Fatima?
Well, I'd nowhere else to bring it. I mean, if you brought it to Fatima, the kids would probably be riding it around.
They need to be active,
She. Yeah, heifer is the female.
Sorry. That would have been the first problem I would have encountered.
This isn't a heifer though, it's a 300 grand apartment in Cork, which judging by the prices when I was down there, it must be a hell of an apartment.
Must be exceptional. 300 grand can go a long way.
Tickets cost 100 quid, but I mean that's a hell of a price. It's a cross-code initiative involving Cork City FC, Douglas GA and Kinsale AFC, with funds being distributed equally. The final few weeks to enter the draw, and you can win your tickets on winagaff.ie. That's winagaff with 2 Fs.ie. I wasn't really sure if there was one F or two.
Isn't it great that actually there can be a cross-code initiative like that?
Yeah.
I mean, that so often there's lines are drawn when it comes to funding and raising cash, and it's like, well, no, this is our field, and that's it. And it's a massive problem in Irish sport.
Absolutely.
And that you have an initiative like this where there's a community benefit delivered by all of those sporting sort of clubs, institutions, whatever it might be. And sometimes you just have to be, and obviously there's a bottom line benefit for all these clubs, but you have to sort of be big enough to come together sometimes and admit you can work together, which doesn't always happen in Irish sport.
But look at I was in United Park there last Friday. It's right beside the Gaelic Games grounds, and it's been pointed out to me by a Drogheda local, if you put the two sort of grounds together, you could have an amazing facility, but it doesn't seem to be.
That's not the way. This is my field. Now, there's historical reasons why one has a very good ground and one doesn't, and the one that doesn't, there's been obviously a neglect and a dysfunction. But there's also been a struggle at times to get sort of the right sort of levels of state funding and support. Where actually, when it comes to sport, one shouldn't be more deemed more worthy than the other.
A certain sadness has come over me. We're actually saying goodbye to you. I thought you were in for the whole 2 hours.
I'm heading off. There's a bit of rugby chat coming in, so I wouldn't bring much to the party there, John.
Would you be one of these go back for a nap now, or would you be just soldier on?
I think once you're up, you're up. That's the key. Once you get up early,
down, you're down.
Once you get up early in the morning, it'd be completely retrograde step to go back to bed, and you'd be up at 1 or something. Your head would be gone for the day.
Thanks a million, Dan.
Cheers, John.
The Boyle Sports World Grand Prix of Darts returns to the City West Convention Centre from the 6th to the 12th of October, and all this week on OTB. And with thanks to the PDC, we're giving you the chance to win the ultimate darting experience. You and a guest will win 2 VIP tickets to the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix final, plus a night stay at the City West Hotel, including breakfast on the Saturday, the 12th of October. We're also giving a pair of tickets Friday's semi-finals every morning this week. There are 2 steps to enter the competition. 1, share OTB AM wherever you're watching or listening. Retweet if you're tweeting this competition. And 2, tell us who won the 2017 World Grand Prix of Darts. Might be a treble bar name, who knows. Tickets can be purchased at ticketmaster.ie and search darts. Dan, we're saying goodbye to you, already have. Andy Dunne is on the way in, but first, in the wee hours this morning, we checked in with Eoin as he spoke to John Duggan from Japan.
Well, we're joined by, the nature of technology, by Eoin Sheahan in Japan. Eoin, good morning.
The 21st century, John. It's amazing. It's a very good morning to you.
Yeah, I hope you're having a great time out there, Eoin. I think did you have your kilt on this morning? You were with the Scots.
No, I didn't quite have my kilt on. I was in a bit of a hurry, actually, to get to the press conference space. I didn't have the correct attire for all the Scottish journalists and for the Scotland team itself. You can see them actually in a nice Japanese garden that they have outside the back of their hotel. The Scotland team actually have only just got up to this part of the country. They've spent the last couple of days in Nagasaki, which really is in direct contrast to how Ireland have tried to deal with their opening week in Japan. They've obviously just been staying out the road in Chiba. Scotland went all the way down south to Nagasaki, so they've gone for a completely different speed altogether. So they're only getting used to this part of the country at the moment. If you're talking about where we are in Tokyo, we're kind of in the south side of the city at the moment. You're between a couple of big areas. You've got Minato City, just a little bit north of here, and then Shinagawa City, just a little bit south of here. I'll get on a train in a little while, which will take me about 40 minutes to get down to Yokohama, which is where the Ireland team are staying. But it was an interesting enough press conference this morning. You had Peter Horn, you had Stuart Hogg, and you had Danny Wilson all up for media, and I asked Danny Wilson about Ireland this morning.
You say you're focusing on yourself, but England have hammered Ireland twice this calendar year. Wales gave them a good battering at the end of the Six Nations as well. How much have you looked at those 3 fixtures in terms of a way to beat Ireland?
Well, we've looked at all fixtures, if I'm being honest, in the recent games that they've played, and as mentioned, they're ranked number 1 in the world. Then they're a good side. They're well drilled, well coached, and definitely they've had their ups and downs. And I think in these games recently, like us, you try things, you experiment with things. You don't necessarily reveal your full game plan going into your first game. So we're fully aware. All teams, I think, have done that. So that gives you sometimes your ups and your downs that Ireland have had, that we've had, that everyone's had.
Do you think they deserve to be anywhere within the top 3 in the world? Do they deserve the number 1 tag?
Well, I think they're one of the best teams in the world, yeah. And I think we've seen those performances in recent times. There's no doubt about that. They've had some huge wins, and we can all list them off. They've also had maybe their odd result that they wouldn't be happy with, but like I said, they're full of quality players, they're quality coaches. So we're certainly fully aware that we go into the game playing against a very good team.
So Eoin, the Ireland press conference is happening very shortly. We're expecting an injury update on Rob Kearney and Keith Earls.
We certainly are. There is uncertainty surrounding the two of them, more uncertainty than, say, Robbie Henshaw. I think it's pretty clear that Robbie Henshaw is not going to play this weekend. In 7 days' time, we'll maybe be having more of a conversation about whether or not Rob Kearney will be fit to play Japan, but we are very much having a conversation right now about whether or not Keith Earls and Rob Kearney will be fit to play. They did appear in training this morning, the training section that allows vision access, and really Robbie Henshaw was the only absentee from that vision section of today's training session in Chiba. But there is still going to be a question mark. We'll find out from Andy Farrell, who's before the media a little bit later on this morning, about the full extent of their injuries or how they're getting on. Because the thing about Keith Earls is not just the recovery from injury. He doesn't have a whole pile of test minutes under his belt at the moment. Rob Kearney, the injury happened on Tuesday, or on Monday, I should say. So it happened kind of late in the day for him as well. So there are 2 big question marks. The question is, who would come in for them were they to be absent? And you'd probably be looking at the likes of Andrew Conway and Jordan Larmour or players like that at this point.
Are there any concerns about the weather on Sunday? People were talking about typhoons and maybe the game would be abandoned and all that kind of thing. Is that just hot air?
It wasn't hot air, John. There was certainly a risk of that. For example, in Chiba, there is a possibility that tens of thousands of people could be evacuated due to threats from mudslides. You can probably make out behind me you've got grey skies, and it is still lashing down here in this part Tokyo. So it's going to be more precipitation that's going to be the issue in this part of the country. The typhoon that hit Chiba badly over the last about 2 weeks ago at this point, those sort of conditions haven't been replicated since I've been here. And really, it seems that the weather has eased off a little bit. It's going to be a bit more benign in those circumstances when it comes to this Sunday. So a rainy day, a wet ball is what we expect, but we do expect the match to certainly go ahead.
Owen, what's it like? What's Japan like? What adventures have you been undertaking over the last 24 hours?
It's an amazing country, John. Like Tokyo is like a country in itself, really. Like you think that you know how to deal with a big city when you've been to another massive city, say like New York, but even Tokyo is on a completely different scale to this. It's like 5 Manhattans in one city. Like when I was planning logistically for this, I thought to myself, well, if I'm 2 tube stops away from a certain point, then that point is very walkable from the other point. And that's not the case at all. You spend a lot of time on trains here, been over and back to Chiba every day, across the river, past Disneyland, as I mentioned yesterday, to get to Chiba every day. Down south to Yokohama isn't going to be so bad a trek from Tokyo, but it is an unbelievable city. I've been into Shinjuku, which is the main area in the city centre, quite a few times because I'm staying quite close by over the past couple of nights. And really, the lights, the colour, the atmosphere in the city centre of Tokyo is second to none. It will swallow up any tournament that takes place here. There's no question about that. We will not probably see evidence in Tokyo city centre of the Irish on tour here or the Scots on tour here. We will see that later in the tournament when we get to see the rest of Japan, when we get to see more rural areas. But here it's very much Tokyo first and Tokyo people first. And in the little corner, you've got a rugby tournament going on. Now, the thing is, Ireland obviously aren't playing in Tokyo. They're playing down in Yokohama. So I'd imagine match day and the main thoroughfares down in that part, just south of Tokyo, will be a lot more vociferous when it comes to the noise you'll hear from Irish fans, with the colours that you'll see from Irish fans being in the country. But so far, so good, John. Truly enjoy. Like the one thing about this country is that everybody here is so unbelievably nice. You have to go looking for trouble if you want to find trouble. It certainly will not find you. The other day, for example, I left a tripod behind in Tokyo Station, one of the biggest stations in the country, one of the biggest stations in the world. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people would have walked right past that piece of equipment. Granted, it was a pretty cheap tripod. I'm not sure why anybody would want a cheap tripod. But when I came back for it half an hour or an hour later, it was still sitting in the exact same place. The other thing I've noticed about this country as well is that it is impeccably clean. You don't see a single piece of litter anywhere. I don't think I've seen a single piece of litter on every street I've walked down. But also, aligned to that is the fact that there aren't any bins. You carry your rubbish yourself and you dump it at home. So I'm not sure. Can we learn something there in terms of our own clean streets, John?
Oh, and you are big in Japan, and we're going to talk to you over the next 24 hours at the World Cup, and just stay safe and get yourself to Yokohama.
Thanks, John. We'll chat to you tomorrow morning. Just one quick thing before I go. Here's some more content from this morning's press conference with the Scottish players and management. Here's what else they had to say about Ireland.
Yeah, I don't think as a coaching group or as a playing group we get too concerned about the speculation. I think once you get confirmation of the team you're facing, you then look into a little bit more detail. You can kind of second guess things and overthink it if you don't. We're concentrating, as cliche as it sounds, we're concentrating very much on ourselves, our game plan, and our standard training.
Ireland have got some incredible players, and the quality that you've just mentioned, if Can is to be out and Conway is to come in, then that's another world-class player that we've got to be fully aware of. And look, whatever team Ireland put out on Sunday, we're going to have to match it and beat it. So it's exciting times for us. If they play their best team or they play boys that haven't got as much experience, then it's still an incredibly huge challenge for us.
Have you looked at trying to expose them in the back three?
I think our game plan, there's a lot of different parts to the puzzle, and without giving too much away, I think we're just concentrating on ourselves and making sure that we don't beat ourselves, we don't make too many silly errors, and make sure that we might get 5 or 6 opportunities in the game to get some points on the board, and we've got to make sure we make the most of every single opportunity we're given.
Andy Dunne, one of the smoothest, suavest voices in world sport, not to mind Irish rugby.
What an intro, I love it.
Joins us at 10 to 9. Okay, I want to cut to the chase because of my horse racing background and all that, and betting is kind of a big part of my life. I don't want to initially get into the Howley thing, but Scotland 3-1 to beat Ireland. Yeah. And we, you know, it was harking back to the England game in Lansdowne at the start of the year where I was like, why are we so short to beat England? And England were 3-1 outsiders. But what do you make of it? I just be worried about Ireland in terms of, are we reading too much into the Wales game in terms of everything's fine, you know, and that's our injury crisis as well.
Well, it was much improved in the second Wales game. But I would, my toes are curled up a little bit when I hear the 3-1 with Scotland. I mean, we have beaten them. I don't know what streak it is, but we've certainly beaten them successively now on many occasions. And every once in a while, and I'm damaged by history, but
in a general sense, or
yeah,
get to that in
a general sense, but
I'm damaged by history, says Dunne.
But they've picked us off once in a while in an important Six Nations game or Five Nations game over the years, and there's a part of me that just feels they're waiting in the long grass this week. Without doubt, in my mind, we've a stronger squad. We're a better team on our day. But they are the same side who scored 38 points unanswered in Twickenham, for example, at the end of last year. And when, when they're hot, they're on fire, and they're very unpredictable. And as a result, I'm definitely on edge. Yeah,
I watch rugby when I can, but I do like watching Scotland because, like Finn Russell and just that unpredictability of them, and you can see Gregor Townsend stamp on the team as well. They're probably everything Ireland aren't in a way. We're a very kind of rigid, formulaic team, and that makes me wonder, you know, how it's going to go. And there's been a lot of talk about the weather. Are we actually hoping for bad weather here to kind of make it more of a brawn thing?
I would have thought we would welcome wet conditions because we can choke them. We can play our game where the forwards stick it up the jumper. We hold possession in their territory deep, and we grind them down. And I think it's probably our smartest route to success against Scotland. So maybe if not the full-on typhoon, if we can get half of it, it'll probably help.
What have you made of the Scotland kind of press conferences coming into it as well? They seem to be saying the right things in terms of their confidence about the group.
They seem quite confident and in a non-fake way. I don't think they're just towing a party line. You're hearing Stuart Hogg talking about, why can't we go and win a World Cup? It sounds a bit far-fetched, but they should probably, they were robbed against Australia in the last World Cup to get into a semi-final. So they have history there in terms of successful performances at World Cups, probably to a greater degree than ourselves. They've been semi-finalists, I think, twice before, and you're going back as far as 91 against England. But they don't seem to have the millstone around their neck that we do when it comes to World Cup performances. The other thing that strikes me is they seem like a very happy, relaxed camp.
That helps.
It always helps, I'm not so sure. There seems to be a little edge and tension to what I'm hearing coming out of the Irish camp. Again, no harm on a World Cup week, it's not like everyone's going to be sitting around drinking G&Ts and relaxed and telling jokes, but there has to be a balance struck, I think, between tension and arousal levels come match day to make the right calls, and when you're under pressure, and a little bit of a mix between relaxation and tension is probably optimal. So it certainly seems like the Scots are relaxed anyway.
Well, maybe Ireland are fundamentally unsure about things because of the year that has gone on and just the injuries, and you know, obviously even the selection process for the whole thing might be slightly hovering in the background as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's ideal if you sat down the Irish management and said, the last 6 weeks, is that exactly how you planned it? And they might say it, in terms of how we want to peak. There's no way that was in the playbook in terms of getting that hammering against England. Even the little things like the Devon Toner selection, which they're entirely okay, it's up to them to pick their team, but the manner in which it was leaked, that wasn't ideal. The manner in which suddenly they had to kind of, with great haste, announce the Irish squad for the World Cup 5 days before they wanted to. So there's been, they might be small things, but they're going to add a little bit of anxiety and tension, I think, to the overall group. And then you see, first week, they land down in Japan and two of the boys pick up soft tissue injuries. So it's probably not been anywhere close to what their ideal prep would have been, but they've got to just get on with it.
It is remarkable when you think of the odds of this time of year you get injuries like that when everyone's been sort of shadowboxing, I suppose. Carney, Earls and Henshaw, Carby, if they're all out, right, so what are we looking at in terms of centre full-back? Where are our options? What's he going to go with if the injury crisis works out as bad as it might? I
suppose I didn't anticipate all of them being. I mean, I would have thought Carby is probably
tough questions.
You really do, yeah. Is there anyone left?
No, actually.
Conway and maybe Stockdale. Are your options then with obviously behind? I think Larmour. I'm not so sure. Will he look at Larmour given? He's given him a run there, and there was question marks around his defensive management, his game management as a fullback. You're looking at the goalkeeper role as well. You're looking at a guy who gives huge reassurance to the 14 guys Carney in front, and it's exactly Carney. He's he has that in spades for the little bit of pace he's lost and maybe the attacking prowess that it begins to escape players as they get older. He makes up for it in spades in terms of his overall management and reassurance of the group at the back. Larmour is at the opposite end of his career where he's still young, explosive, unpredictable. So he might give you a couple of brilliant line breaks, but he probably doesn't give that group huge reassurance in terms of game management and defensive management, coordination, communication, all these buzzwords. So I don't know, knowing the way Joe selects, as he can be traditionally a conservative selector, he might look for a bit more experience in the shape of Conway, maybe.
There's an update that Carney and Earls will train on Friday, and obviously that's a very positive update as well. Is this? I know I was kind of reading the Irish Independent this morning. Rory O'Connor was saying he understands that the participation are in jeopardy of 2/3 of Ireland's first choice back three, and he was kind of saying that there were positive signs from the group, but maybe that they were putting a positive spin on it. But Carney and Earls to train on Friday is good news.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they from whatever gets whatever comes through the gaps in terms of information. Unequivocally, if he's training on Friday, it's good news. Yeah.
And
if he had a proper muscle tear, there's no way he'd be training on Friday. So
Henshaw's in the mix for Japan, but not the Scottish match. Should we be prepared for this sort of injury crisis, or is there a bit of a freakish element about it that it just happened so quickly as well?
I think there's way too many variables at play in terms of saying you can't really prepare for it. It's just really, really bad luck, is my view. I think strength and conditioning coaches, fitness coaches, they're huge on scientific data. They're huge on the load and the workload that's going through players' bodies. They're measuring it constantly. There's just too many variables. Change of environment, long haul flight, hydration, sleep, the hardness of the pitches they're training on. There's just so many things going in there. There's just bad luck, timing for the player, the amount of physiological markers that are, they're probably taking on each player. It's certainly not a lack of prep or a lack of correct analysis of the player's state. It's just bad luck. They've picked up a couple of soft tissue injuries and hopefully they're mild.
Just say, if the four of those happen to be out, could we take that hit against Scotland?
I do. I think we can. Ironically, I think I'd be more concerned if 4 or 5 of our pack were out against Scotland. I think
that's where we function, I guess.
Yeah, and certainly with this Irish side and the style of which we play, we're and if it's raining, for example, again, you just want a safe fielder of the ball in the back three, and a guy will make his tackles, and they're all capable of doing that under pressure. So it would be more, I think, be more of a hit if we were to lose, a Furlong or James Ryan or something to a soft tissue injury, because they're integral to certainly now the line out with Ryan and the absence of Toner, and then Furlong from a scrummaging point of view.
How good has Ryan become?
World class, I think, without a doubt. He's the contributions he makes on a match-to-match basis. In terms of like the frequency of how involved he is pretty phenomenal, but how effective each involvement is. He's consistently making ground through tackles. He's consistently making very high tackle counts. He's obviously a brilliant line-out option. We've heard a lot of emphasis around the scrummaging lock now. He's not specifically the scrummaging lock with behind the tight head, but I'm sure at 6'6", 6'7", he's able to provide a little bit of ballast to the front rows. So,
in terms of the line-out, like Scotland's card has been marked, to put it mildly. So what are they going to do? And are you fairly assured that we're kind of back to where we should be in terms of line-out?
No, I wouldn't.
There's a lot of like, I'm not really sure what to expect here. This could kind of go either way, and there's a lot of pressure obviously on Rory Best. And
it's again, I mentioned like the variables that are at play around soft tissue injuries, in the week we've had. Similarly, there's probably a huge amount of variables at stake in a line-out. There's any given team will have maybe over 100 different calls. They'll have movement variations. They'll have delayed throws, early throws, faster throws, lobs. They're working off a pod system of maybe 3 guys with a jumper and 2 either side. So it can at times look like ballet, in the middle of a game.
How much of that is kind of impromptu throughout the game in terms of how it's developing, and how much of it is completely planned beforehand then for the line?
I'd say almost none of it's impromptu. I used to hate the line out. I played with Steve Borthwick, who's been involved with the Lions in England, and at the time was a player and one of the great line-out nerds. Laminated playbooks, 12-hour work
laminated
days.
No less. Lest it be raining.
Absolutely, yeah. And he gave me an insight into how complex it can get. And the flip side of it is again, the All Blacks, who always seem to find a simple way, would have been their approach was to get set early and get the hooker to get the ball in the air as early as possible before the opposition defence can get set. And basically, if you pull the trigger first, you're giving yourself the best chance if your timing is right. I mean, it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but they definitely try and get set early, set first, to get the ball in early with the lift just a split second before the opposition. When you see a team struggling in the line-out, they tend to be ponderous, take their time. You see the hooker cleaning the ball. You see, a couple of calls getting repeated. You see him holding the ball and pausing behind his head and waiting on the lip.
Lack of confidence as well.
Yeah, I think with confidence comes speed in the line-out. With lack of confidence, you get a little ponderous, bit of second guessing. Unfortunately, in the last few weeks, there's not enough consistency there to suggest they're going to go in confident against Scotland. So if I was Townsend, I would massively go after the Irish line-out. And with the absence of Toner, that selection, there's pressure on management and players like to deliver.
How are Scotland in that regard then? Are they equipped to...
They've lost 1 or 2 key players in recent years. One of the Gray brothers gone. So they I don't know enough in terms of their stats, for example, but I know that they can certainly spoil. I mean, in terms of winning their own line-out, it could well be, given wet conditions, 2 teams spoiling each other's line-out as opposed to one team having a clear victorious line-out, 90% success rate. I think they might spoil a little of our ball, and we may do the same in return.
It's like if Ireland don't sort out their line-out problems, we're absolutely screwed in the World Cup, basically. Long term.
Yeah, I think in this World Cup, I think in any World Cup, if your set piece isn't strong, you're immediately behind the 8 ball.
And we need everything to go right anyway.
We do, we do. So you'd be hopeful. That's again why the Toner decision is quite a surprise, for all.
Yay or nay?
I think it's the wrong decision in my mind. I understand they've got, from their own analysis point of view, they seem to really emphasise that scrummaging lock position. But in terms of what you lose in the line-out with Toner running the show, I'm not a tight head prop, and I've never had Devon Toner scrummage behind me, but I can't imagine there's a massive difference between what he can do and what John Klein can do.
But what did you make of Klein against Wales then?
A reasonable performance, yeah. I mean, for sure, it's I think they've probably looked from a philosophical point of view of bringing in, the likes of Henderson, Ryan, Byrne and Klein, they're all more mobile around the field than Toner. They're all likely to be a bit more dynamic when they carry. And perhaps that's also a reason. However, I think in terms of the doubt and question marks around our set piece, and particularly the line-out, the guy who's run the line-out successfully for the last 2 years, to not be in there on top of a slightly line-out that's operating low on confidence, I think it's the wrong call. Yeah.
Where are we out half-wise, do you think, in terms of is everything okay with Sexton? Are we going to be I
think we're fine. Yeah. Not a concern to me.
Where's Carby going to play when he plays?
I can see Carby fit playing at fullback, and slotting into that out half position in broken play. Maybe.
After another Sexton tackle or whatever.
Yeah, or both running that position. If we set it up around the midfield area, you need a first receiver from the ruck either side. And I can see a fit Carby having quite an influential role in this World Cup in that area. In terms of Sexton, I'd have certainly no concerns around his ability to deliver. We all hope that he doesn't pick up an early knock. And he's 34. He's been around the block. He's very physical. You'd hope we get a bit of luck. Maybe we deserve a bit of luck on that one. But and then McCarthy, I think, is a superb player. Absolutely superb. So to me, out half is not a worry at all. Actually,
you're happy enough with Carty if he's there.
Yeah, I think he's a super player, yeah.
This weekend, obviously, France, Argentina, New Zealand, South Africa, the undoubted highlights. France for Argentina first start. What do we expect here?
Oh, God. I would probably back the Argies at this stage. I think France have had a pretty inconsistent couple of years. If we talk about World Cup history, they've always gone well beyond expectations, the French, but so have the Argentinians in recent history, and their demolition of a depleted Irish side in Cardiff probably still burnt into our brains. Could be a little cracker of a game, actually. Yeah.
Is there the possibility that France kind of can turn it on?
There's always the possibility France can turn it on. Literally always. They of late they've been quite, you'd be quite deflated watching them at times, because the classic French play of the 80s and 90s seems to have almost deserted them. But every once in a while they pluck it out of obscurity, with a sweeping brand new selection of players, and something happens, they get out the right side of the bed. But that's a pretty unpredictable game, but I'm going to back the Argies.
You going to get up for Australia and Fiji 5:45 Saturday morning?
Absolutely not.
No. Very honest.
5:45 is way too early on a day off from work.
To be up at 6:30 this morning you record it.
Yeah. But you've a racing background. You all get up at about 4 in the morning.
I've
out the stables.
Yeah, I don't have a racing background. I just kind of fell into racing journalism, but I certainly don't muck out stables or get up at 4:30 in the morning. Will you be up for France or Argentina at 8:15?
I probably will be. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, I think I will. No, I will be.
Well, you'll definitely be up for New Zealand, South Africa, which is 10:45.
I can guarantee.
Andy, it's the third game. I remember Ireland playing Cameroon in the World Cup back in the day, and you've been out the night before, and bloody hell, missed the first half. I think it was 7 a.m.
It was. No, I think I was in college. I was 19. I think I
simpler times.
Pushed all the way through. I think I just stayed awake for that
one. New Zealand, South Africa. This is obviously a game of particular relevance for us as well. We'll be playing one of them. New Zealand are hot favourites. Do they have any question marks against them going into this World Cup?
They to me, they're not the side that won certainly not the side that won the last World Cup. The 2011 side ended up winning with Stephen Donald, their third choice out half. They plucked from a fishing trip. He was overweight. The skin tight jersey, his belly was hanging out, kicking over that last penalty. And the French were actually robbed in that final. There was multiple disciplinary issues that McCaw got away with. So the 11 side was more a side that just through sheer belligerence in 2011 won the World Cup from New Zealand.
Word.
Yeah. Lovely at this stage in the morning.
Yeah.
2015, they were a superior side to 2011. I think at that stage, maybe one of the great New Zealand sides of World Cup history, and in general they were outstanding. They really demolished Australia in the second half of that World Cup, and were thoroughly deserving. This is not the same quality across the board from a leadership point of view, from a kind of marquee player point of view, but the sum of their parts, they're still New Zealand. They're still high quality, and with a couple of world-class players like Kieran Reid and Barrett. So I see it being a very, very tight game against South Africa, but will New Zealand win?
Will you make it over at any stage?
If off the ball want to send me, I'm ready and willing. Yeah, I don't know if the producers or directors can hear that.
It's getting this from the top, right?
Maybe go straight to Dennis O'Brien, can we?
That's a no.
He might fund it.
He might. If we're betting on it, wouldn't be entirely optimistic, but you never know. You never know. It is a public plea.
Can we get a public poll?
We can.
Send me?
It's like, should I start a podcast? On a scale of 1 to 10, finally, how optimistic are you Ireland can reach a semi-final?
About 2.
Oh my God.
Yeah, unfortunately. If you'd asked me this question last November, I would have said 8 out of 10. Unfortunately,
That's a hell of a swing.
Yeah, it was a hell of a swing in performance. One of the great sporting mysteries to me, that how we
gone from the New Zealand game
from the New Zealand game to 2 to 3 months later with the same group of people. It really looked like a different group, and
teams have figured this out, though. Is it not?
Yeah, nice? teams certainly figured out the style of play, and there's an element of, from a coaching point of view, do you abandon ship very early, or do you stick with the processes that have delivered you great success?
That's a huge problem as well.
For any sporting team, you've got. At the time, we were second in the world. We've beaten the All Blacks, won in Australia and won a Grand Slam. And you've a bad day against England, you don't suddenly throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, OK, we've got to change everything. But I think it was pretty evident by, say, 10 minutes to go in the Welsh game
we're in trouble,
it had been a pretty disastrous Six Nations. The England game again in Twickenham wouldn't have done a whole lot for the group confidence, and then a much improved Welsh game will help a little. But I think there's a fickle nature to our performance at the moment, and as a result, I don't see it right now. But the irony being, if we get through Scotland and we get through Japan, as the tournament goes on, I think we will become an increasing threat. My biggest concern at the moment is actually the Scotland and Japan, this 6-day turnaround. Slightly depleted, Scotland waiting in the long grass, and Japan are literally waiting to pick off whoever loses that game. Japan have built the last 4 years around this game. They've been set up by the tournament organisers for an easy start. They've an 8-day break, and they are going to go full on 100% to attack and try and pick off whoever loses the Ireland-Scotland game. And if we get unlucky in that Scottish game, you're suddenly facing this disastrous prospect of a Japanese side going hell for leather just to pick you off 6 days later. So I'm very, very concerned about the initial stages. If we manage to get through, which I'm very hopeful we do, I actually think we will be a much, much harder prospect come quarter-final. Maybe I'll revise my 2 out of 10 to 4 out of 10.
Yeah, that's a big difference,
20%.
2 out of 10 is more of a headline, really, But thanks a million for coming in.
Not at all, thank you.
We apologise for all Aussies and Fijians who obviously just not really important enough to rugby nations for Andy to get up for a 5:45.
There's probably a lot of Aussie and Fijian listeners at the moment, is there?
Absolutely, and on our worldwide circuit. But thanks again to Andy. PGA Tour golfer Troy Merritt recalled the weeks before he finally committed to getting treatment for a blood clot that has had a devastating effect on his body, and that's after this commercial break.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The 2019 Boyle Sports World Grand Prix Darts is back at the City West Convention Centre, Dublin, from the 6th to the 12th of October. See 32 of the biggest darting stars on the planet, including world number 1 Michael van Gerwen, former Grand Prix champion Darryl Gurney, plus fan favourite Peter Wright. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.ie and search darts. The 2019 Boyle Sports World Grand Prix Darts at City West. Game on.
Rugby season is back, and Lifestyle Sports is giving you the chance to win something very special.
The ultimate rugby year for you and 3 mates.
You could be headed to the Champions Cup final,
the Pro 14 final,
interprovincial games of your choice,
and get match day ready with kit bags full of jerseys,
new season training gear,
€400 in vouchers, and more.
Check out lifestylesports.com.
Lifestyle Sports Rugby on Insta,
or buy any jersey in store or online for a chance to win.
Live rugby with Lifestyle Sports.
OTB AM.
It got to the point where, I dealt with the pain, and having played several other sports growing up, there's a difference between playing injured and playing hurt. If you're banged up a little bit, always give it a go. I always felt that way, and I could still make a golf swing, and like I said, I had to keep my job. But by the time I got back home that week, my arm had doubled in size, was purple from the shoulder all the way down to the fingertips, and my wife finally said, "You need to go in and see the doctor." And I said, "Honey, it's the PGA Championship next week. I think I can give it a go. It's really going to hurt." But she's like, "No, you need to go in and see." And I'm glad she did. And when they first diagnosed me, it was kind of tough to hear that, but at least I finally had an answer as to why I was in so much pain for 2 months. And I'd never had any kind of surgery before, so I didn't know what to expect, what was coming. So I just had to take it for what it was, let the doctors do what they were there for, and everything worked out just fine.
Cameron Brown has sent us in a message. "I'm not Irish, but I love this channel. Hopefully he's not Fijian or Australian. I love listening to the likes of Quinlan, O'Driscoll, O'Gara, etc. Fascinating to listen to. We see all the comments from international rugby fans, and if you are new to Off the Ball, welcome abroad, and continue to let us know what you think." So that thanks to Cameron for that. And obviously we are counting down. Phil, what are we? Today's Wednesday. We're 3 days away now. Yeah. Big interest in the World Cup.
Wall chart ready to go, yeah?
Irish Times had a big pull out today, I think so. Yeah, the wall chart's always a good idea. Something to kind of look at when you're in the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it suits someone like myself who is up early in the mornings. And
are you an early riser?
Well, I am with the job, but I find even at the weekends now you're stop that now. If you're
go on.
If you're getting up early Monday to Friday, naturally you tend to wake up early at the weekends. So yeah, I'll be up.
Will you get up for the Fiji-Australia game? Really early?
5:45. Like, I'd usually be up at 5. But that's Saturday, is it?
It is.
Yeah, that's
not looking likely.
That's unlikely.
One thing you're unlikely to wake up early after if you go to is the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix of Darts, which returns to the City West Convention Centre from the 6th to the 12th of October. And this is going to be a very popular prize for a lot of people. Darts having become so big in the country over the last sort of 10 years or so. All this week in OTB, with thanks to the PDC, we're giving you the chance to win the ultimate darting experience. You and a guest will win 2 VIP tickets to the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix final, plus a night stay at the City West Hotel, including breakfast on the Saturday the 12th of October. Very briefly, who would you bring if you won it?
You'd have to bring... I certainly couldn't bring my wife anyway.
Wouldn't have thought so.
It would be an eye-opener for her.
Nothing to stop women going to the darts.
No, absolutely
except
not.
If they're your wife.
I just don't think she'd enjoy it as much as I would.
Yeah, but it's...
I'd throw it out there on the WhatsApp to see, who wants to go the most.
We're also giving a pair of tickets Friday semi-finals each morning this week. 2 steps to enter the competition. Share OTB AM wherever you're watching or listening. Retweet if you're tweeting this competition. And tell us who won the 2017 World Grand Prix of Darts. Tickets can be purchased at Ticketmaster.ie and search for darts. And all summer we've been running our official OTB football power rankings. Just brings Owen and his missing tripod to mind, really. That's in association with Specsavers, the official sponsor of GA Hawkeye, something that has been hugely influential this summer in both finals, of course, as well. Now that the dust is beginning to settle, Phil, you've taken on the task of power ranking Dublin's 5 in a row for the most satisfying to the least satisfying as a Dubliner. This is an interesting one.
I know, this is probably going to sicken a lot of non-Dubs because I'm in this position where I can rank 5 All-Ireland titles in a row. But
let's start with the least satisfying.
I've worked at all those finals. I've covered all those finals. Funnily enough, actually, last week was the first time I got to cover a replay because I used to always be in studio on a Saturday. So I didn't get the 2016 replay, but I obviously was there last Saturday. So,
can we remind people who aren't from Dublin what it's like to win a less satisfying All-Ireland?
Yeah, okay. Well, the one, I suppose, that like the most anticlimactic one would have been 2018, last year's one against Tyrone. Because the game was pretty much done and dusted at half-time once Dublin got the 2 goals.
I'll give you that.
I was working at the game, and you pretty much knew the shape of your, yourself, if you're hitting a deadline, you're trying to shape your report. It was written at half-time.
It was.
You knew it was done. Then I've gone for the 2015 or 2016 final, the replay. I'm not a fan of replays. Like the 2016 final itself had all the drama where Dublin looked like they were going to go and win it. Then Mayo come back from 5 points down. They get the replay.
Good snap of Enda Kenny there. He's obviously a little bit obscure, but he's pretty gutted.
Yeah, he would be.
Wearing his Mayo tie.
So then I've gone for the 2015 final against Kerry, which was played in dour conditions, rained all day. That was obviously the first of the 5 in a row, and it was bouncing back from the defeat to Donegal the year before. But the thing about the Dublin-Kerry rivalry at the time, obviously Dublin pipped Kerry in 2011, then they beat them again in 2013 in the semi-final, a great semi-final. But watching that 2015 final, you kind of knew that Dublin had Kerry beaten. Even though there was only 3 points in it at the end, you just kind of felt that Dublin were always comfortable. And then I went for...
You still haven't gone to 2019?
No, 2019 is number 2.
What's number 3?
Number 3 was 2015.
So we're at number 2 now?
We're at number 2.
2019.
Again, because if it was done and dusted on the first day, say Dean Rock had kicked that free from out the sideline, I think that would have topped it, because it would have obviously secured the 5 in a row, but in the most dramatic fashion.
Should Cluxton have taken that?
No, I don't think so. I actually thought Dermot Connolly should have taken it. Out of the hands.
That would have been mad, yeah.
Yeah, just out of the hands, because it's just, if you look at where Rock started his run-up, he was on the artificial surface.
Yeah.
Also as well with
tough.
pitches as well, they always elevate.
Yeah.
So, and he'd played 77 minutes, so a lot of football in those, a lot of running in those legs.
You might say he was between a rock and a hard place.
You could do. You shouldn't.
That's like a week and a half too late for that joke.
But
anyway.
Then, so for Dean Rock is actually the man that gets the nod for the number 1, because it's the 2017 final. It's the free
Fair
to
call.
win it. And just so much, I actually remember when I was on air that day, when they threw to me, Cillian O'Connor.
Threw to me, of course, would be quite fitting for the situation.
He had the ball in his hand ready for the free to put Mayo ahead in injury time. His hits the post. Dublin get the ball, go up the other end, eventually get their free. It was actually Connolly who won the free. Dean Rock standing over the ball for a minute. You know, he has time to think about this. Just goes through his routine, just about to kick the ball. Something's thrown at the ball, a GPS, and he's still knocks it over.
GPS signal lost.
Yeah, and he kicks it over the bar. And I just think when you win matches in those circumstances, the fact that it was a final, the fact that it had been nip and tuck all throughout the game, and this like Dublin Mayo rivalry of the decade was brilliant, and he held his nerve. So that's why I went for that as number 1.
It's a lovely kind of thing to listen to there this hour of the morning if you're from Mayo particularly.
And then afterwards, obviously my wife being from Mayo, I have to go and meet my wife and all the Mayo crowd after, and you're almost like, sorry, we've done it again.
His wife, from 2 revelations from Mayo, won't be going to the darts if Phil is going. As the 2020 campaign continues to increase coverage of and participation in women's sports, which I confidently predict are going to explode in the years to come. Here is Louise Quinn on the record crowd we saw in Croke Park on Sunday, and Louise is obviously trying to hope that, a bit like, I suppose, League of Ireland fans and all that crowds do start to increase in the near future.
It was absolutely brilliant to see those records attendances, and that's something that we want to be a part of as the Irish women's national team, to be breaking those records and to get as many people into this stadium as we can, and that sort of support is something that really pushed us on. So it was incredible to see, and to see all the massive 20x20 flags everywhere. It's just to know that that's making an impact on women's sport is huge.
That game against Ukraine, Tala, on 8th of October, as well as the Ireland 21s against Italy, which is going to be, I'd be fairly confident it'll be sold out or close to, advertising the fact that we do have a nice stadium there in Tala that like people should kind of go along to and get to see the women's team as well.
Yeah, I know, like I've nieces that play football and they went to the Montenegro game. My sister looks after one of the teams and brought all the kids to the game, and brilliant. Like the World Cup being on TV was massive because last year's World Cup was on and my nieces were watching the World Cup, and I said, you know, the Women's World Cup is going to be on TV this summer. Watch it. So then they get to watch it and they play football. They see the best female players on TV. It's great that they have role models now. They went along to the game, had a great time. You know, I thought they were banging in a few more goals against Montenegro, but after the game, they made their way down to the players. They got autographs. Some of them even came home with boots. Like just one of them came home with one boot.
Your nieces?
Like some of the team, like they were all getting back on the bus, and it was almost like, what did you get? Almost like trick or treat. What did you get? Oh, I got like this autograph. I got a boot. I got so I think somebody got a sock, that kind of thing. But they had a great time, and I think it's brilliant. And hopefully there's a big crowd. And I think the Vera Pauw appointment is a strong appointment off the back of Colin Bell, because it was disappointing that he left, and we didn't know what the next appointment was going to be. But this is a good appointment because it's important that the trajectory stays on the up. So now it's a case of, can they get to their first major tournament?
The crowd at the football on Sunday as well, and
56,000.
Like, oh, that's unbelievable. My sister was at the game, and one thing I was very conscious of was it was a foul day.
Horrible day.
And
like, considering how nice it was on Saturday.
I think we should be very proud of that. And like, you know, Lidl and everyone who's behind that, they're doing an unbelievable job, because like from the base of whatever it was 10, 15 years ago, 56,000 at a game is absolutely phenomenal stuff. I mean, something that, you know, a lot of professional soccer teams can only dream of, getting that crowd. But what news do we have? Okay,
well, we'll start with the news from the Ireland rugby camp, because we were waiting on an update on the fitness of Rob Kearney and Keith Earls. Andy Farrell, who's soon to be Ireland head coach, has delivered a positive update at his press conference ahead of the World Cup opener against Scotland on Sunday. Both players trained today. Farrell said they're very happy with their progress. They have to come through Friday's training session to be considered for selection. Robbie Henshaw will definitely miss this weekend with a hamstring problem, but he could be back in time for the game against Japan the following week. The term that was used is he could be in the mix. So we'll watch that one. Wales head coach Warren Gatland has revealed his sense of shock after his assistant coach Rob Howley was sent home from the World Cup for an alleged breach of betting and anti-corruption regulations. Former Wales out-half Stephen Jones has flown out to Japan to replace Howley. Wales start their tournament on Monday against Georgia. Liverpool still looking for that first away win in the group stage of the Champions League since October 2017, away to Maribor. That was the last time they won a group game. Now, they obviously coped all right with it last season without winning a group game away from home, and for the second season in a row beaten away to Napoli. Lost 2-0 in Naples in Group E, both goals coming in the last 10 minutes. Dries Mertens with the first on the penalty spot. Jurgen Klopp wasn't impressed with the decision. He thought Callejon dived and said VAR kind of needs to step in there. And
like it was the first thing. I think you didn't even say hello to me this morning. You just said, like, did you think?
I knew we'd be talking about it.
Yeah. I thought RT's commentary in the game, I thought, first of all, George Hamilton was clearly ahead of the pictures in the first half. So it's kind of like, and that's kind of, it's frustrating that happens, but Ronnie Whelan said it was a stonewall penalty. It wasn't. Now, I think it was a penalty, but I think he was out of control and he left his leg out through tiredness. And then obviously the Napoli player falls into him a bit. But what did you make of it?
I thought Callejon went looking for it, but Robertson did himself no favours by missing. And speaking of penalties, Ross Barkley missed a penalty in Chelsea's 1-0 defeat to Valencia. Frank Lampard said after the game that Barkley is the penalty taker, so people need to relax about it. Tonight, Manchester City are away to Shakhtar Donetsk in Group C. That's at 8 o'clock. Spurs kick off away to Olympiacos at 5-6. Few other games to watch out for. PSG at home to Real Madrid. You've also got the game between Atletico Madrid and Juventus. And watch out for Kurt Walker, due in the ring just after 3 o'clock in the quarterfinals of the World Elite Boxing Championships. If he wins, he guarantees at least a bronze medal.
We have a winner in the darts. It's not
Someone's
Phil
hit the
from
bullseye.
Dublin. It's the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix of Darts returns to City West Convention from the 6th to the 12th of October, all this week in OTB. With thanks to the PDC, we're giving you the chance to win the ultimate darting experience. You and a guest will win 2 VIP tickets to the Boyle Sports World Grand Prix final, plus a night stay at City West Hotel, including breakfast, if you get up for it, on Saturday the 12th of October. And you do have to get up for breakfast, obviously, which is often a problem. Tickets can be purchased at ticketmaster.ie and search darts. Today's winner is Trevor on Twitter. We will be in touch. Presumably Trevor knows who he is. Will you be going to the darts?
I think there's talk of a few of us in the office going, because some lads haven't been. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Went to watch Phil Taylor one year in the second round. Unfortunately, got knocked out in the first round by a guy called Adrian Gray, who was known as the freestyler.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I suppose, depending on your...
Well, I wanted to see Phil Taylor playing. This is when he was at his best.
A lot of people would want to see him lose as well, as we were discussing earlier on.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Feel the power. That is all for this morning. Off the Ball Sports Radio is live all day, every day. Off the Ball is back on air and online from 7 tonight. It's now the kind of the difficult decision for the guy who gets up early in the morning. Do you go back to bed or not? No. I'm going to kick on. Off the Ball AM is with you from 7:30 a.m. tomorrow, and you can podcast the show and watch it back on YouTube and offtheball.com.
OTB AM. This is OTB